Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi. Today we're going to be fixing up another vintage Kenner real Ghostbusters figure. Now over the last year I've done quite a few fixes on real Ghostbusters figures, including a few of the Fright features one, but the one that I get asked the most about is actually the Winston figure. They all have these unique features where you push the arms in or rotate the arms and their heads pop up and they turn from normal looking characters to screaming characters. But Winston's one is probably the most unique of those because his head spins around, so the mechanism inside is quite complicated. This is the one I have in my collection, and even he doesn't work particularly well. If I push his arm in, you can see it starts to rotate round but doesn't get all the way. It's supposed to spin all the way round and end up looking like that, but it's just a bit flaky, and it seems that a lot of these figures have ended up like that, and that's what we're going to try and fix today. Now I have one here. This one is a little bit battered, it's got some pen on him, but this one works perfectly. You can see if I press the button in, his face spins up and spins around really nicely. I'll bring another one in, which is the one we're going to fix today. This is a really nice condition figure, but if I move his arm in, you can see his head goes up, and then that's it, it stays in place. I think the spring has broken on this one. It's going to be an interesting figure to fix because I think the mechanisms inside these are fairly complicated. I've certainly looked in some of the others and they're very nicely designed, but obviously with age and use things get weak and bits of plastic break and springs break, and you can see you end up with something like this. So yeah, today we're going to try and fix Winston and get his Fright feature up and running again. So in front of me here I have three different versions of Winston, all in various states of sort of disrepair. This is the one we're going to fix, as I show you, because he sort of works. He's halfway there. The actual feature does go, but it doesn't go back down. This one in the middle is the one that actually works really nicely, but he's got so much sort of pen on him. I can remove the pen. I've got videos on how to do that, but for the moment I'm not going to bother because I think it actually looks a bit like sort of slime or goo, so I'm just leaving this one as is. But his feature works absolutely perfectly. You can see this goes up and down, and it really does work nicely. So that's the one we're trying to copy. We want this one to do the same as that, but you can see at the moment yeah, it's nowhere near there. And then this one was a rough one that I've got given. This one does work quite nicely, and it may be that we end up using this for parts just because he's got very chewed hands, quite a damaged right hand there, so I may end up using this one for parts. But the first thing we've got to do is actually split this figure open. You won't be able to fix this from the outside. The mechanism, I'm guessing, is going to be quite a long sort of piece that goes all the way down here, and the right arm has something on it that when you push it in, it pushes the head up, and I think there should also be a spring at some point, which is what pulls the head back down, because you can certainly feel that when you pull this one that's working up, it's got quite a sort of springy feel to it, and it really wants to pull itself back down, but on this one it doesn't. So to split this figure, it's going to be quite brutal. Basically I'm going to get quite a small fine chisel and I'm going to then hammer that into this joint at the bottom just between his legs there. You can see there's a slight split where the two parts of the figure are held together, and hitting a chisel into that with a hammer will cause that part to split open, and then once we've got a slight split going, I'm hoping we can work our way up the sides again using the sort of fine chisel and just sort of hammer it in until we break the little pegs of plastic that hold everything together. It's going to be brutal, and yeah, it may not work, but sometimes when you're trying to fix a figure like this, the first thing you've got to do is get it open. So let's go out to my garage and we'll get hammering and see if we can split this figure apart. And there you go, you can see I've now got Winston apart just with a couple of taps with a chisel and a hammer along the seams. The one between the legs is the first one to go for, as that sort of splits the bottom part, and then I did a gentle tap on the side and that split the rest of him apart, and we can now see exactly how he works and exactly what is wrong with him. Actually, while I was doing this, one of the arms fell off. Now, I wasn't sure whether this was damaged before I sort of went about hitting him with a hammer or not. It's actually snapped off. There's a post that should come out of this side of the body, which you can see is snapped, which is a bit annoying, but it may have been that was already sort of damaged before I started work on this figure. I didn't really pay attention to that part of this toy, but you know, sometimes these things happen, and when you're first taking a toy apart, sometimes accidents happen. You just sort of learn as you go. But now we can see the insides of Winston. It was covered in quite a lot of grease. I've removed some of this because it was really very sticky, but it gives us a good idea of how this works. So this is his right arm. You can see there's this quite intricate sort of metal piece with a couple of prongs on it, a little bit like a fork. And I guess the idea with this is it actually hooks over this metal piece at the bottom, which has snapped off the main part of his neck. So actually that should sort of fit within there, and like that. So when you pull the arm down, it pulls this piece upwards and it slides up the sort of two prongs. But you can see that has actually snapped off the bottom of Winston's neck. There's a nice little sort of screw mechanism going on, which is quite clever actually. That plastic piece fits into his body, and as the head twists around, you can see that his lower jaw gets caught on these plastic pieces and forced to open as the head spins around. It's really a very clever sort of designed little piece, but obviously it's susceptible to snapping at that point. So because this is the first one I sort of ever opened, and I've sort of found it as it is, I've actually opened another one so we can see how it should work. So I've opened one of the other broken ones I had, just so that we can see the full process in action. So let's take a look at that. So this is the other figure I opened. This was the one that had the very chewed hand, and again I opened it in the same method. So I just hit it with a chisel on the sort of the key seams, and it's opened up like that. So this is the back piece, which should have the arm attached. You can see that there is a peg on one side and it should be attached there. So I have a feeling the other one was already damaged before I sort of hit it with a hammer, because this one seems very firmly held on, and you'd be hard pushed to actually snap that off. But now you can see the full mechanism in place. So this, you can see, still has all of the grease over it. I haven't cleaned this one up. And what happens is when you push this arm down, it really does raise up this bar here, and that pushes the head up through and it spins around. It's a very clever mechanism, and then when you let go, the mechanism is pulled back into place by that spring, so it pulls it down, and you can see that is the piece that has snapped off the other one. I'll bring in the other bit here so you can see, if I hold them together, the bottom section of that has snapped off. Now you may be able to sort of replace that with another piece. In this instance, I think, as I've already broken other parts of that figure, I am going to just amalgamate these two figures together and make one really nice one out of the best bits of each. Generally I don't like to just sort of swap parts out. That always feels a bit of a cop-out in a restoration, but as I've got so many of these Winstons broken, I think I might as well just do a sort of a best of all of them type of fix. Take the best arms, the best legs, the best head, and the one with the unbroken mechanism inside, and put them all back together. But it's very interesting anyway, just to see how this mechanism works and how it was designed in the first place. So if we're going to go down the route of picking the best pieces, we can discount a few bits already. We can discount this head section because that's the one that the bottom piece is snapped on, but it might be worth having a look at the jaw and seeing if that is better than the one on this, because we can easily swap that piece out. That just slots inside. So I'm just going to pull out the jaw on that one, and then we can compare those two together just to see what they're like. Actually, I think the one on the one I broke is better. This one has got very faded paint, so let's put that one in. So we'll swap that piece out. That just slots back in there. So that's like that. Then obviously the back section, we're going to have to use this one because this is the one with the unbroken arm. I did snap the arm off that one, so that one and that arm can go. But then I know the arm on this one is the one that's all chewed. This is the right arm with the mechanism in place, so that's all chewed. So we'll scrap that one, and we'll take the one off the other arm, so which has still got the broken piece in it. So this arm is in much better condition. I think we'll use that, and we can slot that one in. It should fit exactly the same. It doesn't look like there's any sort of running changes in these figures, so we can slot that back in. Line up his mouth, so his mouth parts all line up. Looks like there's this little plastic plate in the middle that needs to be lined up perfectly. Just has to slot in a tiny little gap in the middle. That's fine. It all seems to sort of fit quite easily. I guess when they design these toys, they have to design them so that whoever's making them in the factory doesn't have any issues with sort of lining pieces up. Everything should just sort of automatically line up. Don't have to really sort of concentrate when you're mass producing these. Let's put this back on. We can just hold this together sort of loosely at the moment just to check everything works. So this is the right arm off the other one that was broken, the mouthpiece off the other one that was broken. Let's see if it works. It does, look at that. So although this is not a sort of a full restoration because I'm just swapping parts, it's certainly been interesting to see how this all goes together. So the next thing to do is actually to glue this back together. So I'm just going to take it apart again. We'll drop a few bits of super glue on some of the key points. We'll stick it back together, and then I'm going to give it one final clean. But we've ended up with one quite nice looking Winston that has a mechanism that does work. And I've got a lot of useful parts, I guess, that at some point in the future I may get another one. So I'm going to keep all of these broken parts because it's always useful to have a bag of broken bits just in case you want to do something with them, or you find another one with a equally broken part on it. So yeah, interesting. But let's glue Winston back together and we'll get him all working. Gluing Winston back together should be relatively straightforward. I'm just going to put some glue on the three sort of key points where he attaches onto the back of the body. You can see there's a couple of pegs here near the shoulders and then one at the bottom there just on the pelvis. So I think if I put some glue on these two and on the one there, it should glue quite nicely. There is a little bit of glue down this side, so maybe I should put some on that as well. It's really just little blobs of it. You don't want to put a huge amount of glue anywhere. I'm just using Gorilla Glue in this instance, so I'm going to put a little bit on each of these pegs, just a small amount, and that should be enough. A small amount in lots of places is much better than a big blob in one sort of a general spot. So yeah, we'll just do a little bit on all of these key points, and he should be fine. And then I say I'm going to give him one final clean, and that would be the figure done. So just a bit on that one there. There we go. Let's push him together. Make sure it's all held nice and firmly, and we'll let that glue set. And then yeah, Winston's good to go. And here is the finished figure now that I've given him a good clean. He still needs a little bit of a sort of paint touch on his hair, I'd say. There's a few rubs on his hand, but I'm going to leave most of those. I may just end up touching the paint up on his head just to make that look nice and black. But really the main thing that we wanted to do on this fix is to get his head working and his sort of fright feature working, which it now does. In fact, it works really very well. It works every time. You get a good set of motion, and it also goes back down to the sort of default position. So I think overall that's a pretty good fix, and it was very interesting for me just to be able to sort of break one of these figures open and see how it works, because the mechanisms are always fascinating. And now I know what goes wrong with this. If I ever get another one that doesn't work, I will be able to take it apart. In fact, I may end up taking this one apart and giving it a bit of a sort of working over. I think on this one it's most likely that it's dried up, all of the grease inside has dried up, so it's actually just a bit stiff, because if you really sort of push it, it does work. So maybe it just needs a sort of bit of fresh grease on the inside of that. But anyway, we have another figure that works, and this one is looking really quite nice and certainly ready for display. So if you have one of these yourself, you'll know exactly what it looks like when you open it up, and hopefully that will be of use to you. If you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video. And thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.